Before anything else, do that quick gesture that strengthens our content a lot. Hit the like button right now and check if you're already subscribed. This helps the video reach more fans who truly live Golden State Warriors basketball and want to understand what's happening behind the rumors, the decisions, and the possibilities that can change everything in the blink of an eye. Deal? Then come with me. Because today's topic is the kind that splits the fan base, stirs up the locker room, and makes any franchise think twice before pulling the trigger. There are moments in a season when a team isn't just playing, it's defining itself. And that's exactly where the Warriors are. That feeling that they can win a lot from here on out, tighten the rotation, climb the standings, and become dangerous again when the game gets heavy. But at the same time, there's a truth few people like to face head-on. Being dangerous is not the same as being a real title favorite. And that's where the question starts that nobody wants to say out loud, but it's hanging in the air like smoke. What is Golden State willing to sacrifice to raise this team's ceiling? And even worse, who would be the name on the altar? Because the ideas floating around aren't small. It's not that usual talk of swap a bench piece, adjust one spot, add a specialist. People are talking about changing the structure, changing the identity, changing the kind of connection that takes years to build, and that once it breaks, there's no glue that truly fixes it. The first point is simple and, at the same time, explosive. It's unlikely that Golden State goes around trying to trade Draymond Green as if he were just any ordinary asset. And that's not because he's living a perfect offensive stretch. Far from it. He has his moments of offensive struggle. And anyone who follows closely knows that when the game tightens up, defenses choose where they'll live with the risk and where they'll suffocate. But Draymond isn't a sum of points. He's impact, he's communication, he's reading the floor. He's the kind of piece that keeps the entire team standing when chaos starts. And there's a detail that often gets missed by anyone who only looks at surface numbers. Even when his offense isn't shining, the team can still function just a little better with him on the floor than without him, precisely because he organizes, speeds up the right pass, calls the cut at the right moment, and most of all, because he understands the game the way very few do. But then the poison of the rumor kicks in. When someone puts a big trade simulation on the table with a big name coming in, people stop thinking in team logic and start thinking in raw talent logic. And that's more or less what set this conversation on fire. An imagined scenario where the Warriors would receive Anthony Davis plus another rotation center in a multi-team package. And the price would be high, heavy, almost like ripping a piece out of the roster's heart. In that kind of proposal, the Warriors would give up Draymond Green, Jonathan Kuminga, Buddy Hield, and still add a first-round pick to the package. And I already know what goes through a lot of people's heads when they hear that. But Davis is better than Draymond, so done, make it happen. Except high-level basketball doesn't work like that. You don't trade better for worse like it's a video game. You trade roles, you trade chemistry, you trade style, you trade weaknesses, you trade risk. And the first risk, maybe the loudest one, is Anthony Davis's body. Nobody argues the talent. Nobody argues the impact when he's fully healthy. The problem is how often fully healthy actually shows up. Davis has had seasons where he played very little, and others where he missed long stretches with different injuries. There was a recent stretch where a strain took him out of almost everything. There was another year when he was out for a good while because of a muscle issue. And that becomes a shadow over any negotiation, because the Warriors aren't talking about adding a complementary player. They're talking about adding someone who changes the team's ceiling. And when you put that kind of weight on someone with a history of absences, you're betting big. And there's a brutal contrast here. Draymond, even older, has managed to be available more consistently. He may not be the most athletic player in the league today, but he's been sustaining presence. And availability is part of value, especially when the team needs to lock in rotations, refine the defense, build an identity, and not restart from scratch every month. Now add the second problem: money, contract, roster structure. Anthony Davis makes a massive amount per season, numbers that put him near the very top of the league, with projections that keep him at huge figures for the next seasons, too, including a player option down the line. What does that mean in practice? It means you'd be putting a third gigantic contract on the Warriors' books, freezing flexibility, shrinking the margin to correct mistakes, and, most of all, turning every future decision into a kind of all-in or nothing. Because when you commit to that level of salary, you're not building a roster with many exits. You're building a roster with fewer doors. And if one door closes, you're stuck in the hallway. But the most delicate point isn't even Davis's body or the money. It's what nobody likes to say. Draymond and Stephen Curry are an engine. It's not just friendship, not just leadership, not just history. It's real on-court function. Draymond has delivered countless assists on Curry makes over the years. Direct passes, initiating actions, turning a screen into a lane, reading a trap and turning it into a clean look for the greatest shooter on the planet. Removing Draymond is changing the map of how Curry finds space when the game becomes a puzzle. And then the uncomfortable question shows up. Would Curry produce more with Anthony Davis than he does with Draymond? On paper, Davis is a far more dangerous offensive target. In theory, he draws attention, demands help, changes the opposing center's positioning. But theory doesn't win games. The reality is, the Warriors have a system that's been working for years, off reads, timing, and connection. And connection isn't something you buy prepackaged. You build it. And sometimes, when you try to build too fast, the building collapses before the top floor is finished. But here comes the other side of the coin, because there is a real reason this conversation exists. Basketball changed, and it changed in an area where the Warriors have been hurting, opponents' offensive rebounds. Teams are crashing the offensive glass harder, accepting the risk of giving up a fast break in exchange for second chances. And the Warriors, for a lot of reasons, have been taking hits there. Opponents are grabbing a big share of rebounds off their own misses, at a level that puts Golden State among the teams that give up the most second chances. And that's where Anthony Davis becomes temptation, because Davis is elite on the boards. He grabs a huge portion of available rebounds, well above what Draymond typically gets. And when you picture this team getting punished by second chances, then you add a monster rebounder and rim protector. It's easy to understand why so many people start wavering. Defensively, Draymond can still be the Warriors' most impactful overall defender, the guy who organizes everything and turns five into one body. But Davis isn't far behind in defensive impact, and he brings something that changes games. Constant physical presence near the rim, contests, blocks, intimidation. On top of that, Davis has already led high-level defenses, been the reference point, held systems together. He wouldn't arrive lost. He'd arrive with a resume. And offensively, that's where the package gets even more seductive. Davis is a play finisher the Warriors haven't had in a long time. A guy who catches in the paint and forces the defense to respect it. A guy where, if he gets the ball deep, you have to decide, double and give up a shot or stay one-on-one and risk foul trouble and buckets. Right now, against the Warriors, some defenses are happy to guard Curry with the whole world and live with the rest. With a healthy Davis, that choice gets more expensive. Think about the math. When you have a dominant interior threat, drives become harder to contain. Why? Because the opposing center, who usually sits at the rim waiting to protect, suddenly has to glance sideways and remember there's a giant ready to catch and dunk. That changes the timing of help. It changes the positioning of the last man. It even changes how the perimeter shoots, because the shot gets cleaner when the defense is panicking. And there's another important point that isn't glamorous, but it wins games. Turnovers. The Warriors have stretches where they give the ball away for free, especially when they force passes or try to make magic that isn't needed. And Davis, in general, tends to be less prone to turnovers than Draymond on some of the riskier reads, which can help reduce those mistake-after-mistake sequences that swing games. Now picture a rotation scenario where Davis plays center in closing minutes, but can also share the floor in big lineups with another center who can space and shoot. When you combine strong paint scoring with a big who threatens from outside, you create a kind of poison that's hard to defend without paying somewhere. It's the type of combination that can destroy coverages. If the defense collapses inside, it eats threes. If it stretches out, it gives up layups and dunks. And that's why this kind of rumor doesn't die, because even with all the risks, there's a feeling. With Davis, the ceiling rises. And when the ceiling rises, you start looking across the conference and thinking about specific matchups. You start thinking about how to answer a Nikola Jokic, how to survive against an athletic front line, how to hold up against teams that crush the glass, how not to get swallowed by size. And Davis, when healthy, is one of the most complete answers that exist. But the question comes back, even more cruel. Is it worth breaking the Curry-Draymond partnership for that bet? And while this debate is still hot, another one, bigger still, starts to walk into the room and steal the air. Giannis Antetokounmpo. Because when you talk about Giannis weighing his future and evaluating paths, the effect is immediate. No team is indifferent. None. And the Warriors, obviously, wouldn't be either. Not only because of the immediate impact, but because of the idea of a new cycle around Curry, something that could change the direction of an entire season and redraw what the team is. But Giannis doesn't come cheap. He doesn't come with a smile and a handshake. To land a player that big, you need to offer a package that makes sense for the other side. And that's where a piece of information makes fans hold their breath. According to behind-the-scenes discussions, including Draymond in a package isn't completely impossible to even consider at that level, even if internally the Warriors treat the veteran as extremely valuable and close to untouchable. The logic is simple and brutal. To match Giannis's salary, the Warriors would have to send out one of their big contracts. And when you look at the roster and think about who carries value, who carries history, who carries salary, and who could, in theory, interest a team that's reconfiguring its identity, Draymond's name shows up as a central piece of conversation, even if it hurts. And then the other names become currency in a package. Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski, young players with value, with upside, who can be pitched as the future, as energy, as a rebuild with real talent. A package with Draymond and young pieces suddenly becomes something that gets attention at any negotiation table. It doesn't mean it will happen. It only means that when the prize is Giannis, almost every rule that seemed fixed starts to become flexible. And here's something that needs to be said clearly. Giannis is transformational. He changes the offense, he changes the defense, he changes the pace, he changes the psychology of the game. He takes weight off Curry on nights when the team has no juice because he can carry the paint by himself, smash defenses with power and speed, create collapse, and generate shots. And there's a stat that sums up a Warriors problem: paint production. The team has struggled to score inside with volume and consistency, and Giannis would solve that with brutal impact. A Curry-Giannis duo feels like a dream precisely because Curry doesn't need to monopolize the ball to be devastating. He moves, he cuts, he pulls defenders, he creates gravity, and Giannis, with explosion, creates chaos. Chaos opens space. Space becomes punishment. Punishment becomes runs. It's the kind of partnership that, in theory, could be a nightmare for any defense. If you collapse on Giannis, Curry kills you. If you cling to Curry, Giannis runs you over. But there's a however that hits like a punch. Chemistry and synergy don't come included with Giannis. The synergy Curry and Draymond have is its own language. It's almost telepathy. And that's not a detail. That's the engine. There's a number that illustrates this point in a brutal way. Curry has been racking up assisted makes throughout the season, and a huge portion of those plays come specifically from actions initiated by Draymond. That's where the system breathes. That's where Steve Kerr hits the button and the machine runs. Giannis has grown as a passer, learned to deal with wall defenses, gotten better at finding the open man. But playing with shooters is one thing. Playing with Stephen Curry is something completely different. Because with Curry, it's not just find the shooter. It's find the shooter in motion, at the right angle, at the right time, after 2 or 3 layers of action. And then, without Draymond, you're not just adding Giannis to the team. You're reprogramming the system's brain. And there's still the fit with the other stars on the roster. There are people who look at it and think that instead of moving Draymond, maybe the Warriors would rather study exits involving another star precisely because of spacing. Because as much as leadership and scoring matter, shooting fit is what opens the floor for Curry to breathe. And if you bring in Giannis, you have to think about how to keep the court open enough for him to bulldoze without running into three bodies. But at the same time, look at the paradox. Many of the Warriors' problems today ask for Draymond as the solution. The offense needs spark, but it also needs organization. It needs someone to fit the pieces, so Curry gets the ball where he kills. At the moment, he kills. It needs someone to revive the tempo when the team gets stuck. And Draymond, even when he doesn't score, makes that exist. So the Warriors are stuck in a dilemma that feels like a maze. Keeping Draymond is keeping identity and system function, but it can also mean a lower ceiling if everything else doesn't click perfectly. Trading Draymond for a massive star can raise the ceiling, but it can also break the bridge that gets Curry to his best version. And it can add health risk, salary risk, adaptation risk, and the time risk of building chemistry. And that's where the fan base splits, because there are two kinds of fear. The first fear is the fear of changing and it going wrong. The second fear is the fear of not changing and staying good but not good enough. And the worst part is, both fears feel reasonable. Kai Sotto, at 22 years old, is an athlete with an impressive track record, something that grabs everyone's attention. His size is remarkable, but what truly makes a difference is the combination of this attribute with his skill and agility. With a clear mastery of the paint game and an offensive ability that stands out, he is the type of player who can make a significant impact on any team. When we consider his qualities, it becomes evident that we're talking about a center who is not only a rim protector, but also creative on offense, making him a real promise for the future. However, his stature and talent are only part of the challenge. The transition to the NBA is a tough process that requires much more than one might expect. The intensity of the league, the speed of the plays, and the physical demand are levels higher than those found in any other basketball league in the world. And this presents a huge challenge for any young player. If Kai Sotto were to be signed by the Golden State Warriors, the implications go beyond the court. The Bay Area, where cultural diversity is a trademark, has a significant Filipino community. Kai's presence as a Filipino would not just be another addition to the team, but a symbol of pride and representation for millions of fans around the world. His impact could be felt not only on the court, but also in the hearts of the fans. Imagine the energy at the Chase Center upon seeing this player, who represents a segment of the global population with so much passion. The Filipino fan base, with its contagious enthusiasm, could transform the atmosphere, creating a unique vibe at every game. Furthermore, by attracting more international attention, the Warriors could expand their brand to unimaginable levels, reaching new markets, especially in Southeast Asia, where basketball has been growing significantly. The entry of a young athlete into the NBA is always a moment filled with challenges, and with Kai Sotto, it wouldn't be any different. The league demands more than just natural skill. Consistency and defensive agility are equally essential. Although the athlete has shown potential at various times, his experience in the Japanese league demonstrated that there are still adjustments to be made. Moments of brilliance are clear, especially on offense, but the NBA's level is unforgiving, and every weakness is quickly exploited. Kai will need to improve his adjustment to the fast-paced rhythm of the league and refine aspects of his game that may be vulnerable. As much as the NBA is a trial by fire for any player, the good news for Kai is that the Warriors, a franchise known for developing talent, could be the perfect environment for him. Under the guidance of great sports legends like Stephen Curry and Draymond Green, along with a highly qualified coaching staff, Kai could evolve in impressive ways, learning and absorbing as much as possible from those who are references in global basketball. However, the pressure to be ready to contribute will be immense. Every spot on the Warriors roster is valuable, and the team aims to win more titles now while preparing for the future with promising young players. Therefore, Kai will need to quickly show that he's ready to be an important piece in the team's pursuit of their next championship. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep up with more content like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll stay updated on everything happening in the basketball world. Oh, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to get notified whenever a new video is posted here. Leave your comment too, we want to know your opinion. See you in the next video.